Okay.
Hopefully they couldn't see my face.
I want to talk today about, I don't know what to call it, so I gave it a bunch of names: signposting, segmentation, time allocation, how to more effectively tell people when you're going from one part of your speech to the other, how to realize you have different steps to go through, and which ones are the most important. So what I want to do is I want to go through some of this and then have you give some mock speeches containing all the signposting and segmentation rhetoric, but not the arguments themselves, right? You'll have to come up with argument titles, because I think that's good preparation, rehearsing argument titles, but not the arguments themselves. So when you get to the argument, you can say blah, 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 and then go, now turn to my second major argument, right? So we'll keep all those things involved, and let's use this house would withdraw from Iraq within 60 days. That makes sense as the motion. So what I did is went through and talked about and labeled all the different segments that you'd have in the speech, and then I put in bold the ones that you're probably spending the most time on. Okay? So, you know, first speaker, opening proposition, introduction, definitions, the model if it's a policy topic, thank you. Then you preview three arguments, make sure to include the second speakers and say what it is. Then you signpost the first one, signpost the second one, and then have a conclusion. Right? And obviously you spend most of your time on your major arguments. For the first speaker, for the opening op, you have an introduction, you accept the definitions, you might ask for specifics on their model. That's another thing I think we don't do enough. If they have a model, you want to immediately demand lots of specifics, because later in the second or third speech from the opposition, people start worrying about specifics. And we need to do that a little more. Preview three arguments, include the second speakers, signpost the first argument, signpost the second argument, and that's where you would spend most time. Signpost your refutation or proposition first argument, signpost your refutation or proposition second argument, not the first. You wouldn't do that twice, and then have a conclusion. Second speaker for the opening prop, introduction, preview the speech, and you can mix these up. The stuff that's inside, you can do it sort of in the order you want. Yes, Madeline.
I have a question on the asking for specifics on the model.
Yeah.
You just do that during your speech?
Yeah.
Or during...
Well, if they... I mean, my first suggestion is have a point of information about who's going to do this, how are you going to pay for it, how are you going to... Because then you look smart and they look stupid, instead of when you start asking those questions like the second and third speech.
Okay.
But if you don't get a chance to do that, or you don't like the answers, then you should say, hey, you know, this is too sketchy. How is this really going to work? You legalize marijuana for all ages, or, you know, just for adults? How do you control the sales? Will it be taxable? Will you have it, you know, quality controlled? Will you, you know, stuff like that. Okay, second speaker opening op. By the way, those of you, you need to get this document. Second speaker opening op, introduction, preview the speech, signpost, and then you defend your first two arguments, right? You refute the op's first argument, refute the op's second argument, then present your new argument, third argument. Now, what I'm saying, anything between preview and conclusion, you can switch that around, right? Depending on how you want to do it. But what you don't want to do is spend so much time on the stuff in unbolded letters that you don't have enough time to present your new argument. Right? That's the problem. Or spend so much time on your new argument that you can't do the other stuff. And that's time allocation, and I think you have to decide. And one of the things that you can do is to say, okay, I want to start doing X at about minute 4, and then I'll finish at minute 6.5, and then go into my conclusion. You need to think about that actively. Or I'm going to have my, and then I'm going to spend, you know, a little time, then I want to go right into my new argument, and then I should be done with that by minute 3.5, right? See what I mean? And then move to it. And that's why it's really good to have a timer to see not just 4 but to see the half minutes too. Right, because you can't just allocate things in minute blocks. You probably have to allocate time in 30-second blocks. And that's 14 time blocks in your speech. And now that's big numbers. You have to keep track of all that. And I'm not Kate Schuster, so I can't. I mean, she takes a 6-minute speech and divides it up into 18 20-second components. And then maps out her time allocation in 20-second increments.
When does she do that?
When, as a debater.
When in the debate?
Oh, during in rebuttals, 6-minute rebuttal in policy debate,
Oh,
she would
okay.
allocate things. Now she only coaches worlds, so as a former policy national champion. Okay. Second speaker, opening opposition. Now you see what's highlighted here, right? Your number one job there is to take out the new argument of the second speaker of the opening prop. Right? Whatever comes new in the speech in front of you, that's, you have to smash it. That's like your first priority. Okay. Now, you have a third argument, but then you also, right underneath where it says signpost your new third argument, it's also important to refute their new argument. Maybe you should have put that in bold. First speaker, closing prop, intro, preview of the speech. Signpost your case extension. This is very important for you as the second prop. You're expected to lead the debate in a new direction that's still loyal, right? And show them how smart you are. Okay? So that's the thing you really need to do. And then you also need to refute the new argument that came right in front of you. Then first speaker, closing op. And the important things are, signpost your opposition extension and refute closing props case extension. Right? Those are the primary duties. And again, here I have signpost extension of best opposition arguments. Right? And you wouldn't say, let's turn to their best arguments. You would say, what are the important arguments that they've made? Important would be okay, right? What are the important arguments that they have made? And then deal with them. You're not expected in these last 4 speeches to go through everything in the debate. And generally, what do you pick? You pick arguments of yours that you think are the best, or the ones that they've done the most damage to. You pick probably their best argument and their worst argument. Right? Their best argument because you're afraid of it and you need to beat it. Their worst argument because you want to hold it up as an example of what a bad job they're doing. And of course, first speaker, closing opposition is the one that, it indicates that there are contradictions on the government side. The contradiction should have become clear. You've heard 3 speakers, so they've had plenty of time to contradict themselves, and you want to point that out as first speaker closing up. Then, proposition with speech, introduction. First thing you have to do in this speech is handle the opposition extension, the new argument that came right in front of you. Then afterwards, summarize the debate. And you need to clearly say, now it's time to summarize this debate to see what's happened. Then you might want to have a new structural scheme. Let's look at this morally and practically. We'll see that in both instances it fails, or it succeeds, or whatever. Right? So, that sort of restructuring. Then the opposition with speech, introduction, conclusion, sandwiched around your summary of the debate, which doesn't have to be mimicking the summary of the debate by the prop whip speech. Right? You want to have your own kind of thing, and then put it together. Okay? So does that all seem pretty? We already know all this, right? Okay. So now what I want you to do is pick a position.
Against or throwing.
No. Pick a speaker position.
Oh, I'll go for first speaker, I guess? Or?
No, you always do that.
All right, you're right. I'll go for the one and last speakers then.
Do one of these middle four.
Oh, one of the middle four? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they're the most difficult.
Okay, I guess I'll go for second speaker. No, I'll go for second. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll go for second speaker opening probably.
Okay, Joe.
Second speaker opening up.
Okay, Lucas.
I don't know. Any suggestions?
Yeah, why don't you do first speaker closing op?
Okay.
Danielle, why don't you do first speaker closing op, closing prop? Okay, and then why don't you do first speaker opening op, Patty?
Okay.
Okay, so what I want you to do now is, I want some kind of introduction, right? Then I want you to go through and do these with lots of, now let's turn to my second argument, which is, my pants are falling down. Then instead of going through the argument, just say blah, 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 blah. All right, and then go, now turn to my second major argument, that my face is falling down. Right, pulled down inexorably by the force of gravity. So have a, do all your signpostings, do your introduction and conclusion, do your argument titles, and then, are you ready? Go, prep.
Okay.
Which speaker are you?
I'm the second speaker for the government. The second,
Okay, go.
Yeah, I think so. Members of the House, 4 years ago, a choice was made. Whether we agree or disagree with the decision to have invaded Iraq, for this nation to have militarily removed the regime of Saddam Hussein, that is not the issue in this debate. What is the issue in this debate is determining what is the best course of action for the United States at this point, what is the safest course of action, and what is the only responsible course of action for the nations of the world, for the Iraqi people, for this country, and for all citizens of the globe. I would like to begin my statement today by first pointing out why our arguments still stand, despite the attacks of the opposition, and then I'd like to move on to directly address the arguments of the opposition, and then present the new matter of the government today. Now, I'd like to begin by pointing out how the opposition has failed to demonstrate that genocide will not happen in Iraq, as we have argued. Secondly, I would also like to point out how U.S. prestige will still be damaged, as we have argued. I would now like to address the opposition argument that the U.S. presence will accentuate violence in Iraq.
Hey, come on, say blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay. Blah, 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 blah,
Okay, very good, that's fine.
Okay, blah. I would now like to, and now that leads me to addressing your second argument, that UN forces will be more effective than the current US-led coalition. Completely false. Blah, 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 blah. And now, our new matter for the day is that withdrawing from Iraq will massively destabilize the region. Blah, 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 blah. I have a lot to say here. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, we get the idea, buddy.
And so, the bottom line is, we have no choice in this debate. The government would like for nothing more than to see our troops home as soon as possible. But we don't have the luxury of that choice at this time. If we leave if we leave too soon, our forces will be back in Iraq, once again, mitigating a genocide and having to fight a situation that is far more dangerous and far more hazardous than the current situation. And so to prevent that from happening, we the government believe there is no alternative but to remain for the time being, to not withdraw in 1 year, which is far too soon, and rather to stabilize the region and then leave as soon as time will permit. And for this reason, we beg to propose.
I think you're opposing.
Oh, we beg to oppose.
Yeah. Cool. Joe, second speaker, opening up. Go.
I would like to examine for a moment a problem that is at the forefront of our American society today. This issue is, of course, the distance between the reality of image and weight of our society and the imagined image and weight as portrayed in the media. I would like to begin by refuting some of the arguments made against for the first speaker. And then I would like to continue onward to my own new matter, and finally refute the opposition's new matter. To begin, Americans are getting fatter. Blah, blah, blah. Next, I would like to focus on the idea that models and pop culture icons are getting thinner. Blah, blah, blah. And third, I would like to focus on the fact that there are higher instances of eating disorders that are occurring at younger ages within the community. Blah, blah, blah. Now, on to the new matter of the proposition. They state that blah, blah, and blah, and to that I respond blah, and blah again. I think that they are entirely false in all of their accusations. And now to conclude, let me ask you, is it right to imagine a 12-year-old girl huddled on the floor of her bathroom crying, disturbed by her own image in the mirror? Is that fair? Is that right? Is that any society that we want to live in? I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't live in that society.
I'm with you, my brother. All right, which speaker are you, Danielle?
I'm the... Oh wait, is it my turn? First speaker?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, first speaker, closing prop.
First speaker,
Yeah.
closing prop.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle Bauman. I like your neckwear.
It looks nice.
Yeah, it's very
It's
stylish.
chilly, thank you. Okay. We live in a world divided by religion, ethnicity, lack of understanding, intolerance, blindness, and many other ills. Where can we start to bring equality to the world? Within the United States, this house, we can bring equality through our very existence, through our bodily existence, through universal health care. I would like to begin by
Preview. Preview the whole speech.
Okay. In support of this, I will begin by bringing in new matter, and then I will be addressing some of the opposition's arguments, which have been contradictory and have several problems with them. And then that's okay. To begin with, I have two new contentions. The first of which is that there is innovation through nationalizing healthcare. Blah, blah, blah. The second argument is the cost of illness and accidents are a handicap like any other. Blah, blah, blah. Now I would like to go on to expand on the proposition's earlier arguments and to elaborate more on our plan and to answer some of the questions that were asked by the opposition. Blah, blah, blah. Now, the opposition's last argument that was brought up, which was blah, 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 has several problems. It's inconsistent with the argument that was before it, and it has several logical fallacies. Blah, blah, blah.
You might want to number those. 1, it's inconsistent. 2,
Okay.
it is logical fallacies.
Okay.
So go on.
Okay, so first, it's inconsistent with the opposition's earlier arguments, and second, it has several problems.
What you said, logical.
Logical fallacy.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. And now, and lastly, I just would like to address the first opposition, very quickly, the first opposition's arguments, which have the problem of blah, 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 blah. And because of the opposition's failure to recognize the need for equality within the United States and their failure to prove that the current system that we have is the best suited for the needs of this country, you should support universal health care, and I beg to propose.
All right. See, it seems a lot easier than it is. Right? If you just look at the list, it seems pretty easy to do, but it's not.
I wish we could just give speeches without any evidence at all, like this, you know?
In the debate?
Yeah, use the
Sure.
law, you know?
Yes, sure.
It's a powerful
Yeah.
form of evidence.
All right, fellow debaters.
I'm sorry, which one are you?
Oh, I'm a first speaker closing opposition.
Okay, cool.
For
All
whatever
right, go.
we're talking about. Friends, comrades, acquaintances, we are here today to discuss the seminal event of our generation. Many years from now, when you're telling the stories of the past to your children and your grandchildren, you will be telling about the choices and decisions and actions that you made today, right here in this room. Because we are talking about something that will affect the rest of the world for many generations. And what we would like to do here is really frame this debate in a way that it has not been going before. We would like to do this by, I would like to preview how we're going to do this right now. And I would like to say that our first argument for what we're arguing for, which would happen to be leaving Iraq, is the value of human life. Blah, 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 blah. And think about that. Now that I have put that so well and succinctly, I'd like to let that move on and segue into my second point. And my second point will be the value of hip-hop music as a cultural icon, as a cultural uniting force that can help Iraq if we somehow leave. Which is, you know, thank you. And I would, after now having brought in these new conditions of life and hip-hop music, I would like to actually bring up the issue of, did I preview and then make my preview the thing? Alright, I would like to preview my points, which will be human life, and which will also be hip-hop music as a strength of culture, which will be brought into Iraq with our departure. Like I just said, my first point, human life. Yada, 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 etc. My second point, having made that point, I would like to bring up of my new matter, which is really hip-hop music. And I think this new matter really is important to consider beatboxing. Now, these new matter contradicts very well the arguments that we have just heard by the closing proposition, which was garbage, 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 and demolished, demolished, demolished. Those arguments were completely ridiculous and offensive, and I would like to, having made those my arguments, and is much harder without it. Having refuted competently and eloquently their alleged arguments, I would like to now just extend all of the arguments that have been brought to you thus far by the opposition side, which were the first arguments we heard. Number one, this and that. Number two, that and this. And then also the new matter which we brought to the table, which was the value of life and hip-hop music. And I think that really bringing up these issues puts us in an excellent position to place them right next to, juxtapose is the word, them with the previous arguments which we have just heard. And I will do that by highlighting their main arguments. Garbage, crap, garbage, garbage. And having done that, I would like to bring this really down to a more cohesive whole, which is that we will not be powerless. We will take our fate by the horns, and we will decide that based on these values and based on this acknowledgement of the value of what we're listening to and what we're living, that we cannot stay in Iraq. When you're holding your newborn baby, do you want to look it in the eyes and say, you will not be burdened with the mistakes that we have made, but we can make a new future for you? And I think that's what we need to say to every newborn baby from now on by opposing. Thank you.